Oh man, this is glorious. Let's start this video, this tutorial with a stone cold fact. If you run, you're a runner, and don't let anybody else tell you any differently. It really doesn't matter the pace you run at, how you run. If you run, you're a runner. Deal? And the beautiful thing about running is that in the first year or two of your running journey, when you just start, just the simple act of getting out there and running is good enough to see you improve week on week, month on month. It's so simple and it's so nice. As long as you build gradually and you stay sensible, you're gonna get better. But there will come a time in every single one of our journeys where we reach like a plateau, like a glass ceiling, where it's different for everybody, but it might be that you're not getting as fast as you want to get, or you're not getting as far as you want to get, or you're just generally feeling stale. And that is the time when it's good to know about the big three. And I try and look at the big three like this. They're three pieces of a very small jigsaw puzzle, but a very important jigsaw puzzle, that is running performance. And if you slot all those three pieces together, then you are going to smash through your glass ceiling, you're going to smash through your plateau. So what are the big three? Well, it's easy. VO2 Max, Lactate Threshold, and running economy. Focus on all three of those throughout your training, you're going to fly. But let's explain how when I get back into the studio so that I can finish this run up.
So, you want to improve your run? 3 components. 3 different ways of training, all reasonably complementary. As in, if you train one, the other 2 will still get a little benefit. Not as much, but they do all help each other a little bit. So let me make 2 things clear before I actually go into how you factor these into your weekly or monthly training schedule. And the first thing I want to make clear is that I'm not going into too much detail. I'm just skimming the surface of each of these components because, handily, I've already made videos a little bit more detailed of each of the components, so things that you can get your teeth into, but they deserve the kind of 10-15 minutes videos each of those components. So this is more of a overview and how you factor it into your week. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, if you're a beginner runner, if you've just started running and maybe you're months or even the first year into your journey, just getting out there, I said it earlier, is enough. You are going to get a little boost of your VO2 max, of your lactate threshold, and of your running economy. There's no need to do anything much more specific than that in the early days because some of the sessions are pretty hard. So just know, if you're new to the journey, then just getting out there is amazing. You're a runner, like I said earlier. But if you are ready to go to the next level, then let's talk the 3 components. And the first one is VO2 Max. I'll link a video there explaining a bit more about what VO2 Max is. But essentially, it's how much oxygen your body can take in and use whilst you're exercising. It's that top level. And the way that we train the VO2 Max is we do pretty intense interval sessions. I'll be honest, if you watched my video last week where I was trying to run 1 kilometer as hard as I possibly could to get near world record pace, it's things like that, maybe kilometer repeats if you can run a kilometer in about 3-ish minutes. But on the other side of it, it is just 2 to 4 minutes of pretty much as hard as you can run. We're talking about a 1 to 2 mile, 1 to 2 kilometer type pace, so even harder than your 5k. When would I do these sessions? I'd probably do them once every 2 weeks for me because I'm training for long distance, and that might change. If I was training specifically for 5k, you might do 1 a week or even 2 a week depending on how far down your running journey that you are. But these are sessions that you don't need to do a lot of because you could lose the quality when you're tired, but you definitely need to do. So VO2 Max, train it once, maybe a fortnight, once a week, at the top end, twice a week, and it's as hard as you can in intervals of 2 to 4 minutes with the same amount of rest. Simple. And after we've dealt with VO2 max, we deal with lactate threshold. Now, lactate threshold is a lesser intensity. It's a lower intensity than VO2 max. You usually might touch on some tempo runs or some sub-threshold runs in training, and we'll touch on that in a minute. But it's usually a percentage of VO2 max. For untrained runners, it might be lower, and for high-level runners, it might be as high as 90% of VO2 max is your lactate threshold. But what is the lactate threshold? Let me show you by drawing it. Essentially, the lactate threshold is the very point at which lactic acid accumulates in your blood and muscles quicker than your body's ability to remove it. So the curve goes up really quickly and you have to slow down. Before that, you're running at quite a hard intensity, but your body is able to remove the lactic acid as it accumulates. And the hardest you can run while flushing the lactic acid out is your lactate threshold. Usually, it's around an hour of exercise. So if you're an elite half marathon runner, it's probably a half marathon distance that you can run at lactate threshold. But if you're newer to running, then it might be a 10k takes you an hour, and that's your lactate threshold. And how do we train lactate threshold? Again, pretty simply by training around the lactate threshold. That's about the only way that's going to do it. And you can achieve that with runs like tempo runs or tempo intervals, kind of race pace intervals, running at a discomfort. And if you know your heart rate zones, then you'll know that tempo is high zone 3, low zone 4. And what you want to do with this, if you're slightly newer to lactate threshold training, then you might want to break it down into tempo intervals, like 5 minutes at your goal half marathon race pace, followed by 5 minutes easy and repeat. Or if you're a bit further along again in your journey, then you might want to do 20 or 30 or 40 or even 50 minutes at tempo, at that race pace, at that threshold. And that is going to help push the lactate threshold up and mean that you can run harder for longer. And that's the best way to train the lactate threshold. And because tempo sessions are slightly less traumatic on your body and slightly more specific to me, as in trying to run longer distance, I factor one tempo session in a week and I do it on a Thursday. So you could do that weekly and there will be a lot of benefit there for you. And finally comes running economy, which is quite an exciting one because it really encompasses a few different things. But essentially what running economy is your body's ability to take oxygen in and transfer it into forward motion. That's a really interesting concept. So how do we make that better? Well, there's a few things we can do. And the first thing we can do is invest in our strength and conditioning. I can't go into too much detail on this because again, it probably warrants its own longer video. But if you think of a stronger, suppler body, something that can resist injury so you can train more consistently, but also use those muscles to greater effect with more force driving us forwards, then think about strength and conditioning as a way to improve your running without running. But that is going to boost your running economy right there. So I would factor in at least 10 to 25% of your week should be strength and conditioning training. And it doesn't have to be long sessions. It could even be 10 minutes here and there, but do invest in it. And off the back of that, something that not many runners do, but a lot of elite, if not all elite runners do, is drills, is ways to make your technique better. And again, they don't need to be long. I will link a video here to some drills that can improve your running technique, but it could be just 10 minutes before each of your running sessions, you incorporate some drills that show your body the correct way to run, and it will remember it when you get a little bit deeper into your runs and you're a bit tireder. You should be able to use that muscle memory to keep your technique ticking over, and therefore using the oxygen most efficiently to drive you forwards. There's nothing worse than having arms that completely cross the midline like that and they drive you sideways rather than forwards. So technique work is absolutely crucial. And if you think about technique work, then maybe have a little think about literally getting a run analysis, or even just learning how to analyze your own technique, which again I have made a video about and is in the tutorial playlist. But a slightly more expensive way, but a really good way, is to get a specialist to analyze your run, to go on a treadmill, get them to find your strengths and weaknesses and see if you can actually just make that technique even more fluid, even more efficient, make yourself look like Kipchoge or Jim Walmsley or Joshua Cheptegei. Like, those people glide, and that's what we're all aiming for. They are ultra efficient. And finally, for run economy, there is no substitute for just gradually building up the distance that you run and at an easy pace. When you start building your aerobic base, training in low zones, then loads of good things happen to you. Things like increased capillary density in the muscles, things like increased mitochondria, more red blood cells, a bigger, stronger heart that can pump more blood per beat, which is stroke volume. Loads of good stuff happens, and that will naturally push up your VO2, your running economy, and your lactate threshold. It's a win-win. So factor long runs into your week as well, but make sure they're easy. You don't want to be creeping up into somewhere where you're actually training the lactate threshold or something different. Those types of runs are crucial for your recovery, but also for improving your running economy. It is a win-win. Now, before I sum this up in a neat little bow, I will just say that specificity is important in training. And what I mean by that is, if you're training for a marathon or an ultra marathon, there really is not much need for you to do all-out VO2 max sessions. They're of limited benefit because they're all about running fast for a very short period of time. They still benefit you, but is the cost, as in the wear and tear on your body, does that outweigh the benefit? Who knows? Being specific is important. I do very few VO2 max sessions for that exact reason. I'm training my body to go as long as possible. So have a think what your overall aim is and then tailor your weeks and months towards that. And that's it. It is a whistle-stop tour around the big three, the components that can take your running to the next level. It's as simple as that. There are far more in-depth videos on the channel in the playlists for you to have a look if you're interested in any of those components. And also, I'd be really interested to find out how you structure your personal training. How does your week look like? How much strength and conditioning do you factor in? Do you do drills? Do you do tempo? Do you do interval? Where are you at the moment? And if you need help, always ask. That is what I'm here for. That's why I do what I do. Now here, hopefully, we'll ping up the tutorial playlist. And in here is all of the things that I've been talking about and more. Loads of session ideas for intervals, for tempo, for whatever, how to look at your technique. It's all in there. And there's the subscribe button, you know, just in case you're not. And I'll see you Sunday.